There's an old saying in Tennessee, I know it's in Texas, probably in Tennessee, that says, "Fool me once, shame on you." If fool me, we can't get fooled again.
Everybody's got to be covered. This is an un-Republican thing for me to say.
Universal health care.
I am going to take care of everybody.
Who pays for it?
The government's going to pay for it. The government's going to pay for it.
This tax would raise approximately $5.7 trillion.
In many cases, I probably identify more as a Democrat.
I hate the concept of guns. I'm not in favor of it.
Why are you joining the Reform Party?
I really believe the Republicans are just too crazy right. I mean, hey, I lived in New York City and Manhattan all my life, okay? So, you know, my views are a little bit different than if I lived in Iowa, perhaps.
Partial birth abortion. Would President Trump ban partial birth abortion?
Well, look, I'm very pro-choice.
But you would not ban it?
No.
Or ban partial birth abortion?
No, I am pro-choice in every respect. This is an un-Republican thing for me to say.
Who do you think would be the best qualified to make a deal with Iran?
Hillary's always surrounded herself with very good people. I think Hillary would do a good job.
Make a deal with Iran.
Well, I think Hillary would do a good job.
Nancy Pelosi, the speaker.
And I'm very impressed by her. I think she's a very impressive person. I like her a lot.
Well, I thought he did a great job tonight. I thought he was strong and smart, and it looks like we have somebody that knows what he's doing. And it's a strong guy who really knows what he wants, and this is what we need.
Hillary's a great friend of mine. Her husband is a great friend of mine. I think Hillary is going to take it, and I think Hillary is very, very capable. I'm very pro-choice, a liberal in health care.
Universal health coverage.
I like universal.
As far as single payer, it works in Canada. It works incredibly well in Scotland.
It just seems that the economy does better under the Democrats than the Republicans.
Donald Trump and I both agree that there ought to be more taxation.
What do you think of eminent domain?
I think it's a wonderful thing. I'll be honest with you.
He was basically a Democrat.
Shortly before Trump announced his decision to run, he received a mysterious phone call from Bill Clinton.
I didn't get a phone call from Bill Clinton before I jumped in the race. Did any of you get a phone call from Bill Clinton? I didn't. Maybe it's because I hadn't given money to the foundation or donated to his wife's Senate campaign.
Until recently, Trump praised the Clintons, his longtime personal friends, every chance he got.
Hillary Clinton, I think, is a terrific woman. I mean, I'm a little biased because I've known her for years.
You support her?
I don't want to get into this because I'll get myself into trouble, but I just like her.
That's why I asked you to see me get into trouble.
I just like her. I like her, and I like her husband. Hillary's always surrounded herself with very good people. I think Hillary would do a good job.
That's not surprising given his generous donations to Clinton's Senate campaigns and to the Clinton Foundation.
Actually, it was vintage Trump, you know. He has been, believe it or not, uncommonly nice to Hillary and me. He thought Hillary was a good senator for New York after 9/11.
Right.
And he's one of the many Republicans who supported our foundation before they got the memo.
Not only has Trump bankrolled Hillary, he's also supported Democrats like Chuck Schumer, Harry Reid, and Anthony Weiner, amongst others. Notice how Fox failed to nail Trump on his key weakness, the fact that he's flip-flopped on just about every issue imaginable.
Well, I'm very pro-life and feel strongly about it.
I'm very pro-choice.
Since he has changed his mind on amnesty, on health care, and on abortion, I would just ask, what are the principles by which he will govern?
And yes, in many ways, Trump is likable. He's a great public speaker. He makes populist statements that other politicians are afraid to say. But I think we've been down that road before, and it didn't turn out so good.
Yes, we can.
Trump's whole shtick is posing as an anti-establishment candidate, but his cozy relationship with the Clintons clearly suggests he's the opposite of that.
He buys and sells politicians of all stripes. He's already, hey, look, he's already hedging his bet on the Clintons, okay? So if he doesn't run as a Republican, maybe he supports Clinton, or maybe he runs as an independent. Okay. But I'd say that he's already hedging his bets because he's used to buying politicians.
How do we let him get away with it, folks?
You mentioned recently that you're a Christian, that you go to church. How important is your faith to Donald Trump?
Very important. I'm a Protestant. I'm a Presbyterian.
Well, maybe because of the fact that I'm a strong Christian and I feel strongly about it, and maybe there's a bias.
In his 2000 book, Think Big and Make It Happen in Business and Life, Donald Trump boasts of having had sex with some of the, quote, top women in the world. An article in the New York Post referred to the candidate for president as, quote, a well-known womanizer. Trump did not refute the claim.
And I won't get into the filth of his conversation with Billy Bush that Christians, along with the rest of Trump supporters, so flippantly and eagerly dismissed as locker room talk. Oh, he's not without his flaws, they said, but he's far better than Hillary. I would ask, in what way exactly? Can you articulate a moral argument, or is it all economic? All I have to say is if he was talking about your wife or sister or daughter, you know as well as I do, you would be beyond angry and expect everyone to agree he is a scumbag. But we aren't electing a pastor, right?
After leaving one wife after another and marrying a younger model, Trump chose his third and present wife, Slovenian immigrant Milena Knaus, a woman who has posed nude for a European men's magazine. The Trump Taj Mahal Casino in Atlantic City was a first, boasting a 35,000-square-foot adult entertainment complex with both female and male strippers, pole dancers, and lap dancers. Many of Trump's supporters think he stands for biblical marriage, but homosexual activists know better. Gregory Angelo, president of the Log Cabin Republicans, a homosexual advocacy group, is cited in a CNN article saying Donald Trump is, quote, one of the best, if not the best pro-gay Republican to ever run for the presidency.
You're not going to raise that f***ing price. You understand me? So those factories are cheap as and they don't give a Listen, you mother we're going to tax you 25%.
Have you ever asked God for forgiveness? That's a tough question. I don't think in terms of, I'm a religious person. Shockingly, because people are so shocked when they find this out, I'm Protestant, I'm Presbyterian. And I go to church and I love God and I love my church. And Norman Vincent Peale, the great Norman Vincent Peale was my pastor. The power of positive thinking. Everybody's heard of Norman Vincent Peale. He was so great. He would give a sermon, you never wanted to leave. Sometimes we have sermons, and every once in a while we think about leaving a little early, right, even though we're Christian. Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, Frank, would give a sermon. I'm telling you, I still remember his sermons. It was unbelievable. And what he would do is he'd bring real-life situations, modern-day situations, into the sermon. And you could listen to him all day long. When you left the church, you were disappointed that it was over. He was the greatest guy. And then, you know, he passed away, but he was a great... He wrote The Power of Positive Thinking, which is a great book.
Two faces have
But have you ever asked God for forgiveness? I'm not sure I have. I just go and try and do a better job from there. I don't think so. I think if I do something wrong, I think I just try and make it right. I don't bring God into that picture. I don't.
Pause for a moment and reflect on what Trump is really communicating here. In first attempting to dodge the question of whether he ever asked God's forgiveness, Trump divulges that the one so-called Christian he holds in high esteem is one of the most influential 33rd degree Freemasons who ever lived, who, given the very nature of the higher Masonic degrees, is no real Christian at all, but rather a Luciferian. And then, like any other proud-hearted son of the devil, Trump acknowledges he never believes he does wrong, despite all the immorality he is engaged in, and that he has no intention of bowing the knee before God to ask his forgiveness.
Now, when I take, when we go in church and when I drink my little wine, which is about the only wine I drink, and have my little cracker, I guess that's a form of asking for forgiveness. And I do that as often as possible because I feel cleansed.
So for forgiveness, that notion of forgiveness, that's not a central
Well, I try not to make mistakes where I have to ask for forgiveness, for one thing. So when I'm asked a question like that, it's like, I don't like to make a lot of mistakes.
So, and I would never ask the detail, but the idea of repentance, is that something that's important to you?
I think repenting is terrific.
But do you feel the need to?
If I make a mistake,
that's part of forgiveness.
If I make a mistake, yeah, I think it's great. But I try not to make mistakes. I mean, why do I have to, repent? Why do I have to ask for forgiveness if you're not making mistakes? I work hard. I'm an honest.
Cusp of a new epoch, one of prophecy, puzzles, and signs in the sky. And that epoch begins today.
Go, it's like a conspiracy.
A conspiracy, eh? Freemasons run the country! Freemasons run the country!
It's like a conspiracy.
A conspiracy, eh? Freemasons run the country! Freemasons run the country!
You'll see that how this man never changed. He does not repent. He only changes what he says, like a chameleon, for political expediency. He does what he has to do and says what he has to say to get where he has to go. People keep saying how he's uncontrolled, what an outsider he is, how he says what he thinks. He says what itching ears want to hear, and plays to people's emotions and gives voice to those who want to stick to the opposition, whose allegiance is more to vengeance than to truth, who are blinded by their frustration and marginalization to seeing that they are being used as pawns in a game, always, always, always advancing the agenda of the Antichrist beast system.
Just to button this up very quickly, sir, are you saying that if you become president, you might try to appoint justices to overrule the decision on same-sex marriage?
I would strongly consider that, yes.
One of the groups that's expressing fear, the 𝐓𝐑𝐔𝐌𝐏𝐄 group.
Yet I mentioned them at the Republican National Convention. And everybody said, that was so great. I have been, I've been a supporter.
Well, I guess the issue for them is marriage equality. Do you support marriage equality?
It's irrelevant because it was already settled. It's law. It was settled in the Supreme Court. I mean, it's done.
So even if you appoint a judge that...
It's done. You have, these cases have gone to the Supreme Court. They've been settled. And I think I'm fine with that.
Please be specific. Tell us your views on LGBT, how you plan to be inclusive as president. Speak about North Carolina bathroom law in particular.
Oh, I had a feeling that question was going to come up, I will tell you. Well, look, North Carolina did something that was very strong, and they're paying a big price, and there's a lot of problems. And I heard one of the best answers I heard was from a commentator yesterday saying, leave it the way it is right now. There have been very few problems. Leave it the way it is. North Carolina, what they're going through with all of the business that's leaving and all of the strife, and that's on both sides. You leave it the way it is. There have been very few complaints the way it is. People go, they use the bathroom that they feel is appropriate. There has been so little trouble. And the problem with what happened in North Carolina is the strife and the economic punishment that they're taking.
So if Caitlyn Jenner were to walk into Trump Tower
and want to use the bathroom, you would be fine with her using any bathroom she chooses?
That is correct.
Okay.
Of course, when notified that this stance might be make or break with much of the evangelical base that they wanted to make sure back Trump, Donald backed down, saying he would let the states decide the issue.
Different issue, also a social issue.
You know, there's a big move to create new bathrooms. Problem with that is for transgender. That would be first of all, I think that would be discriminatory in a certain way. It would be unbelievably expensive for businesses and for the country. Leave it the way it is.
Let's talk about abortion, another potent social issue. The Republican platform every 4 years has a provision that states that the right of the unborn child shall not be infringed, and it makes no exceptions for rape, for incest, for the life of the mother. Would you want to change the Republican platform to include the exceptions that you have?
Yes, I would. Yes, I would. Absolutely, for the 3 exceptions.
Would you have an exception for the health of the mother?
I would leave it for the life of the mother, but I would absolutely have the 3 exceptions.
Far from being truly pro-life, even in his flip-flop since becoming a Republican, Donald Trump clearly believes we should murder children for the crimes of their fathers. And the religious right will accept this like they compromise on everything else. The only ones they have the guts to really stand up against are those who tell them the truth of how their continuous compromising is the real reason the country is in the state it's in.
Huge issue is Wall Street banks. You're a guy who said you know the Wall Street bankers better than anyone.
Better than anyone.
All right, after the 2008 financial meltdown, do you think any of the guys you know better than anyone should have been in jail?
The answer is if they did something purposely illegal, the answer is absolutely yes. Better than anyone.
But let's watch you duck, dodge, and deflect away from condemning those who you truly represent, the class of criminals above the law, too big to fail, too high up the chain to prosecute, the high-level mammon worshippers, the enemies of the Republic.
Now, with all of that being said, I don't believe anybody has really been indicted and gone to jail, which is pretty amazing, because I'm sure there was some pretty bad moves made. I will say this. A lot of mistakes were made. You can't put a businessman in jail because he made a bad business decision.
No one is calling for putting people in prison for bad business decisions. Where the outcry comes from is seeing real, verifiable crimes having been committed, costing real citizens their hard-earned savings, and the worst anyone is punished is by being fined by the corrupt Department of Justice. Fines the banks then pay under the very corporate welfare government stimulus money they were rewarded with for their willful, negligent fraud perpetuated against the American people.
You know, they want to do well, and for the most part, Wall Street bankers want to do well. I know so many of them. You know so many of them. They want to do well. They're good people, like everyone else. Get a lot of money. I think they're paid too much money, but what are you going to do? I mean, you know, it's one of those things.
Does
but
it ever
if they make a business mistake, you can't put people in jail. If they do something that they know is illegal and wrong, you got to put them in jail.
Does it ever surprise you that so many of your supporters are so angry at those banks because they feel the decks are stacked against them, and yet you're the guy they're supporting, and you're a guy who's been given every single advantage those banks can give to the wealthiest Americans?
Well, I have taken advantage of the banks probably more than any human being on earth. I love banks, right? I love banks. And I love fighting with banks if I have to. I mean, you know, depends on what happens. The economy goes up, it goes down. But I found bankers to be very good people. I found them to be very honorable people. Generally speaking, they want to do what's right for the country.
Fraud and potential criminal conduct were at the heart of the financial crisis.
Titans of Wall Street.
No one going to jail, no individuals being held accountable.
Too big to jail.
A pervasively corrupt pattern of behavior. More than 90% of the underlying loans were defective.
Isn't that fraudulent?
Yes.
This is a stain on the American justice system.
I found bankers to be very good people. I found them to be very honorable people. Generally speaking, they want to do what's right for the country. They want to do well. They're good people.
Good, honorable people, because they do what is profitable for those who are part of the big club, of which Donald is most certainly a member.
I found it interesting, though, that Donald Trump's also Jesuit trained.
Jesuit trained at Fordham, and he's also 33rd degree Freemason.
Yeah.
There's no way you're going to recover from 3 or 4 bankruptcies without being in with the big boys, restoring your credit in New York. And all those guys are the Knights of Malta and the big banks.
They're good people.
I very much look forward to dealing with the president in the future, including counsel. We explained some of the difficulties, some of the high-flying assets, and some of the really great things that have been achieved. So, Mr. President, it was a great honor being with you, and I look forward to being with you many, many more times in the future. Thank you, Sam.
Very good man. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Yes, and there was a question that was answered, George. At the end there, I asked Donald Trump if he was really going to seek the president's counsel, and that's when he responded at the very end saying he is a very good man. Those were words that I hadn't expected to hear from Donald Trump, covering him all over these years. He talked about how he had respect for him, and he hoped to see him many, many more times in the future. Even made a reference, George, you heard there, to some of the excellent things that have been accomplished. So this was apparently a quite cordial meeting. As Trump mentioned, it lasted for an hour and a half.
And John, interesting that he's going to seek President Obama's counsel, given the fact that so many of his promises on the campaign trail are to undo many of President Obama's accomplishments in his first 100 days in office.
Well, and also given the unbridled animosity that we have seen between the two men. As you mentioned, Donald Trump questioned whether or not the president was even a citizen of the United States and therefore eligible to be president of the United States. And President Obama made no bones about the fact that he believed that Donald Trump was temperamentally unfit to be commander-in-chief. Now we see the two of them, quite cordial words from each man. The president saying he is bound and determined to try to help Donald Trump be a successful president, a successful transition, because he thinks that will be that will mean success for the country as a whole. And this extraordinary statement from Donald Trump that he will be seeking counsel from a man he once said was not a legitimate president.
Very good man. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Very good man. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Well, Mr. Trump is a friend of yours.
Yes.
I think you would, I know him casually. He's obviously playing some sort of character.
He's got a part here. The part is he's running for president.
Yes, exactly.
People who appear to be in opposition politically or financially or industrially or in many ways are working together. You'll find that men in the same society will take opposite positions in public. The method they use is that of the Hegelian dialectic. Thesis played against antithesis leads to a synthesis. In other words, for Hegel, for history to make progress, you have to have conflict. And when you look at the key people in the order, you will find that they generate conflict. So Bush and Harriman politically are conflicting. Coffin and Buckley, although part of the same order, are in public conflicting with one another because conflict leads to the new synthesis. In other words, at that level, politics disappears, and people often wonder, why does a Democrat join a Republican administration? They want to acquire power above all.
Power?
Political power. As you look at their actions, the political power is to bring about what they call a new world order, which is a one world. But they use the Hegelian techniques, and we know enough about Hegel to know that not only does this mean the dialectic process, the creation of conflict, but it also means that individuals such as you and I, or anybody watching this program, will be cogs in the state, that we have no individual rights. Our rights for Hegel, individual rights for Hegel, come about through obedience to the state. We see it in the educational process, that we have adopted what I call a Hegelian system of education, which is not to bring out your innate talents, but to prepare you to be an individual cog in the state.
After the results were becoming clear, we saw the stock market futures drop by almost 1,000 points, 850 points or so. And then Donald Trump made that very conciliatory acceptance speech, and stocks started to go up. And then the Hillary Clinton and the president made their very conciliatory speeches yesterday, and the market soared.
Do you see what they're telling you here? What is being implied between the lines? That were Trump an actual outsider ready to shake things up and tear down the Fed and give the American people their economy back and truly overthrow globalism, like he used alternative media puppets like Alex Jones to infer, the markets would have plunged an economic collapse would have ensued. But since Trump came out and showed that far from draining the swamp, he was controlled opposition ready to play ball and further the globalist aims, the markets soared again. And since they have convinced people on both sides of the false paradigm that economy and security is first and foremost and that financial prosperity is to be valued above all else, they subliminally tie a sense of well-being in seeing the markets go up to seeing globalists who have acted as enemies for political expediency come together for the good of the country.
As I say, crooked Hillary, crooked Hillary. She's as crooked as they come. Hillary has worked very long and very hard over a long period of time, and we owe her a major debt of gratitude for her service to our country. I mean that very sincerely. I think he's the worst president maybe in the history of our country. I think he's been a disaster. He's been weak. He's been ineffective.
Senator, it was a great honor being with you, and I look forward to being with you many, many more times in the future. Thank you, sir.
He's not going to prosecute any of these people. All those WikiLeaks and other supposed leaks, like the one where Hillary was quoted as saying that if Donald won, her and her minions would all be swinging from a noose. It was all mind control to get you to accept Donald as an outsider. But listen to the man. He tells you exactly what he's about every time he opens his mouth, if you are able to read past the doublespeak to what he is really telling you. Obama, Hillary, Newt Gingrich, and the rest of the neocons who will fill up his cabinet, the Heritage Foundation, and all the other Vatican-controlled figureheads of the religious right are his people. People who mouth the virtues of the Republic while working toward globalism at every turn. As patriotic as the Patriot Act. It's like a working man going to court expecting his attorney will actually fight to exonerate him. But the attorney goes out to breakfast with the DA and hobnobs with the judge and comes back telling his client how it would be in his best interest to accept a plea bargain because he is very unlikely to win if he fights. The working man doesn't understand how the game is played. The working man has paid the attorney, but the attorney doesn't really represent him. And why would he? He has to work with the DA and the judge over and over again. And the working man is just another hump going through the machine. Cattle to be milked and sheep to be fleeced. The allegiance in the mammon machine is never to truth or justice. Principles don't make money. In fact, a lot of the time, they can cost you money. And, as is plainly obvious, Donald's moral compass is whatever is financially profitable is what is right.
I will build a great, great wall on our southern border, and I will have Mexico pay for that wall. Mark my words.
These people, your people, these people are taking our jobs.
You know what?